Welcome to Napoli. This is a very typical Saturday morning in Napoli, having our coffee in the square. Napoli is famous for its coffee because it's really rich, almost creamy, very strong, and it is by far the best coffee in all of Italy.
Hello, you're listening to Right So, Off We Go, the podcast where you'll get the inside track on destinations worldwide. I'm Ailish Ford, and today we're off to the beautiful city of Naples in sunny Italy, where I chat to Dublin woman Barbie Ryan. During our conversation, she describes the theatrical nature of the city.
One thing you can say about Naples when you're walking down the street is it's like a theatre. Many people have said that because it is like a natural cinematic scene. Every street you walk down and the people are the characters, already made film when you come to Naples, and that's actually quite true.
She encourages me to walk down to the Bay of Naples.
About a 15-minute walk from the city centre. Very easy to get to. And then once you're down by the ocean, you walk along the ocean and you're looking at the islands, and you're looking at Vesuvio, and you hear the ocean. It's beautiful, it's clean, it's pedestrian only, so it's an incredible experience.
And whets my appetite for some tantalising desserts.
The most famous is sfogliatelle, which comes in either a riccia or a frolla, which means it's either crispy or like a cake-like assistance, and inside is like a sweet ricotta cheese. And it is made with layers and layers of sort of phyllo pastry, super light and incredibly delicious.
We started our conversation with Barbie telling me how she came to live in Naples and what life is like there.
The first time I ever came to Naples, I used to travel to Capri with my sister for our little sort of getaway during the summer. And I'd always pass through Napoli, obviously fly into Naples, and I would escape it as fast as possible because I always believed it was this sort of chaotic and dangerous city. And, I'd either arrive at a train station or the airport and go straight over to the islands. And then I met my husband in Capri and had to make the decision. At that time, I was consulting in the US and Ireland, and I had to make a decision where we were going to live. And because I was a consultant, it was sort of easier for me to maneuver and travel around the world. And so I made the decision to come here. And because he was based on Capri, which is a very beautiful but tiny island, I never really wanted to base my life there because I felt it was too remote, and obviously I always wanted to be able to travel for work, etc., etc. So we found an apartment in the historical centre of Naples. And so really the first time when I was considering moving here, he sort of, brought me around to Naples and said, okay, let me show you Naples through the eyes of somebody who sort of knows it better. And he did, and I saw it for the very first time in a completely different way. It was vibrant, yes, it was chaotic, incredibly gritty, but for me, I saw it very differently. I felt very calm immediately. I didn't see or feel any of the dangers that I had perceived existed. I saw that the people were incredibly warm. It was a city full of life, day and night, and filled with all these pockets of beauty that really, unless a local had shown me, I probably would never have seen. So that is the discovery of Naples, which is why I believe even to this day that for people, there still probably exists this feeling for many people still that Naples is, I know its reputation has improved a lot over the years, but I still feel even today in 2024 that people really have the wrong idea of the city. There's this historic story that people are used to hearing about. Mind your bag, it's dangerous, it's dirty. And I feel it's like any city. I think many cities, I think you could say the same about many cosmopolitan cities. But what people miss is Naples, the charm of Naples, the reality that Naples is, that while it is gritty and dirty, it's incredibly vibrant, charming and full of beauty. You just need to know where to look.
And of course, it's such a shame, I think, that a lot of people just fly into Naples and then they go off up the Amalfi Coast, maybe without discovering it and seeing it as you've just described there.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I did that for maybe 11 times. That's how many times I came in and out of Naples before I actually stayed here, before I stayed over for a weekend and looked at the city. So I'm the first person to put my hand up and said, I did that. My ignorance, I was led by my ignorance and I didn't know. I never really bothered to, it wasn't really on the radar of cities to visit. People talk about Italy is obviously one of the, probably the number one destination for many travellers because of its diversity and beauty from the entire country. But I don't think up until recently that Naples was on anybody's list. Now, that has changed. I do know that Naples has really now become a major tourist destination. I know that from living here. You see it every day, and the difference between Naples now and Naples 20 years ago is vast.
And what, Barbie, do you find is the main difference between living in Naples and living in Ireland?
For me, what pops into mind if somebody asks me that question, I always say convenience. Naples is not convenient. There's no one-stop shop. A very silly example probably is the example of Dunnes Stores. I know when I go home, I was like, oh my God. You can get into your car, go down there, and really kind of whatever you need, you can get. No matter what dish you want to cook for dinner, you can nip in the car, run down to pretty much any supermarket now in Ireland and get any ingredient from anywhere. And I love to cook Asian foods and international dishes. And in the first 10, 12 years of living here, it was impossible to get anything exotic. No Thai, no vegetables that were slightly different. And while the Mediterranean diet is fantastic and I love Italian food, every once in a while, you like a little diversity. So there's everything is, I live in the historical centre, so there's no driving. We have a car, but you kind of use it to go outside the city. Inside the city walls, it's very difficult to drive. You can, but it's all one street road, so it's complicated. So when I say there's no convenience, it's like when I do a grocery shop, for example, I have to go to 10 different locations, which I know in the movies they portray that as a very exciting, take your basket and go and get your vegetables here, your bread here and your meat here. But on a day-to-day basis, that can be very time-consuming and annoying, especially when it's raining. So it's not easy to get around to do daily chores. The convenience is everything is close. So you sort of get used to it. And in the end of the day, it's become charming because I know my grocer, I know my salumeria on the corner. I go to my butcher. Everybody knows me by name. I know where to go for fruit and vegetables. But that took time to get used to. And then I guess, the one thing I would say, which is true, is that things don't function as well here as they do at home. At the post office, being one example, which I could write a book on the post office of Italy, which I've often told my husband. I said, what, I think I will. I said, no one will read it, but I said, just for me to expel all of the anger I have, what it means to go to a post office in Italy, in Naples.
So what does it mean, Barbie? Lots of queuing and
no, they don't queue, Eilish. They don't queue. They have a very big problem with queuing. I am used to following the rules in that sense. If you go in, either you take a number, or in generally speaking, without those number machines, you go somewhere. When you stand in line, you go in. It's obvious there's a line, and then you go up to a counter. But here, even if there's a machine where you take a number and you're standing there to go in to do what you're next in line, somebody goes ahead of you. There's 20 windows where you could go up and do what you have to do, sportellos, and 3 people are of the 20. There's only 3 people working, and 2 of those are having coffee and talking. And that is not an exaggeration. You'll have one person there, so you could be there for a post office is a half a day.
And tell me, Barbie, one question I ask all my guests is to recommend a film or a book set in the city that we're talking about. I know I always find that watching or reading something set in that place before I visit just makes the experience better when I'm there.
Absolutely.
So what film have you chosen?
Well, I'm going to mention 2, one very briefly and then one that was made in 2010, so it's a little bit older. And that is a film that John Turturro, the American actor, actually obviously made. I think he has Neapolitan roots. And he came and he filmed a movie here called Passione, Passion in English. And it's basically, it was very much discussing it examines sort of at the musical culture of Napoli and the influences of that culture, because music and the arts in Naples is enormous. It is one of the things that I really can associate with. I used to work in the arts, both in the US and in Ireland. And I feel very much at home here, very connected to the fact that the people here, not only are they sort of artistic on a daily basis, I think one thing you can say about Naples when you're walking down the street is it's like a theatre. Many people have said that. In fact, I have, my brother works in films and my cousin, and they both came here for the weekend. And one of the things they said is, we're coming back here. We're going to make a film here because it is like a natural cinematic scene. Every street you walk down and the people are the characters, already made film when you come to Naples. And that's actually quite true. You really can feel that energy when you're here. So anyway, he filmed a movie called Passione. And as I said, it examined the musical culture of Naples, which is very strong. And the influence that, the Greeks, who were the original people who basically, 2 millenniums BC founded Naples, the influence of Greek culture, and the American cultures after post World War II, who came, the people who invaded Naples, and then of course, obviously into modern society. But he made this beautiful movie, sort of brought in all these sort of local talents, like Massimo Ranieri, Pepe Barra, Embarca, all these people who were sort of at the time on the music scene in Naples. And it was just a very beautiful thing. And he actually filmed many scenes in a very gorgeous restaurant called Taverna dell'Arte, which at the time, the owner, Pasquale, they sort of became friends. And so I think when they finished filming, they'd go in and they'd have their pastas. And it sort of gives you that feeling of what Naples is, of the people, how they love their food, they love their music, they love to talk. It's a very inviting way to understand the city. So it is a film documentary, but it gives you a feeling. The second movie I want to talk about, which to me really, really surprised me, was a movie made last year. Don't know if you've heard of this, Eilish. It's a movie called Mixed by Airy.
No, I haven't.
So it came out last year, 2023. The director was Sidney Sibilia, and it is actually based on real life events of 3 Neapolitan brothers, I think in the 70s and 80s. It's Neapolitan dialect, which is different to Italian. And I watched it, obviously no subtitles because it was just here in Naples. And so I'm never going to get the ins and outs, because even though I've been in Napoli a long time, I don't speak Neapolitan. It's a completely different language to Italian. I understand it, but it is quite difficult for me to learn. But I can understand when they're speaking, but I definitely don't speak it. So to watch this movie in dialect, it was incredible. I understood everything. Obviously, you're watching movies, you're hearing music, you see the expressions on the actors' faces, but I really understood it because it is literally one of the best movies I've ever seen in my life. All of the actors, the 3 primary characters were superb, incredible, beautiful actors, incredible story. Anyway, the true story is basically it's about a guy he comes from a very poor area in Naples called Forcella, and his dream was to be a DJ. But at that time, DJs were the people that sought DJs he wanted to be flashy, sort of very good looking, and he was none of those things. He was poor, but he didn't have any sort of connections. And he ended up, his father also, his family were very poor, and his father tried to keep the family going by selling fake tobacco from the mafia, basically. Illegal jobs. And he was a cleaner in a record store, and he used to clean the store. And when the store closed, he used to mix tapes. So he found out that he was an excellent mixer because he always wanted to be a DJ. So people would come into the store, and instead of buying the original cassettes, because it's the day of the cassette, they would buy his cassettes, because what he would do is he would copy the albums, and the extra half an hour left on the tape, he would do a mix of songs. And people were buying the tapes for the half-hour mix that he made, not for the original songs. So long and short, it turned into a multi-million lira at the time business. And of course, which was illegal because it infringed on copyright. But you end up rooting for these underdogs because you so want them to succeed. It is the most beautiful story in that you really feel, you want to know what Neapolitan people are like, you need to watch that movie. Because it shows all of their grit, all of their good-heartedness. And it has the most incredible music, the most beautiful soundtrack. Every single song is fantastic. So if you watch that movie, you hear the sounds of Naples. It's a fantastic movie, beautifully shot. You see Naples, it's shot in Naples, and you see talented Neapolitan actors. Just incredible. Incredible piece of work.
Fabulous. It's going on my list. And of course, Barbie, some people are more readers than film watchers, perhaps.
Yes.
And you have, of course, the probably the most famous one in modern days is the Elena Ferrante book, My Brilliant Friend, which is set in Naples. I know when I read that, I really did feel I was in Naples. But of course, she was writing books set in Naples before the fame that came with that one, wasn't she?
She was indeed. One of her first one was Days of Abandonment, which is a shorter novel, and it was really before she became well known for L'Amica Geniale, My Brilliant Friend. But Days of Abandonment is a lesser known novel, equally beautiful, smaller, and it again, while it's set in Naples and Neapolitans, there's also actually film made of it as well, which I didn't see. It might be a little bit more dark, a little bit more maybe depressing than the other ones, even though she's very real. She discusses the reality and the poverty of Naples very well, I know. But it's a beautiful novel to pick up by hers if you haven't read it. As I said, it's more character-centric than it is about the city, but you do get a feeling of the strength of Neapolitan characters and what they go through.
And it's a great place for music, isn't it? And probably always has been. So
yes.
What music have you chosen to give us a taste of Naples?
One of their great heroes is Pino Daniele, and he's famous for a song called Napoli, which Napoli is, and Quando, were just two examples of songs that he sang. And he was born and bred here. He went to school here. And he's actually passed away a few years ago. But he's that wonderful mix of melodic, thoughtful, and sort of a little bit rock and roll as well. Incredible musician. Caruso, the famous Caruso, is also from here. O Solo Mio is from here. You know, it's the song was written in 1898. The famous O Solo Mio. They're songs that obviously people would know, and they sort of evoke that sense of, you know, southern Italian, Mediterranean, out in the evening music. And nowadays there's a lot of rap coming from Naples. My kids would remind me if they hear, I think Joliet, and I've said that terribly, but he's an up and coming rapper. But they're becoming really, really big, and they're breaking out of Italy.
Fabulous. And now you've alluded to it already, Barbie, but Naples is just full of history. So Are there any stories from its past that strike a chord with you?
Well, yeah, actually, as I said a little bit earlier on, that it was, obviously the Greeks, because it was a port, it was easy access, and so it became a very important part of Grecia Magna when they came over here. So Greeks were the first settlers here, and there's discussion of when that really happened. But moving past all of that historical things, it became Neapolis, which means new city, around the 6th century BC, and it was probably it was considered the most cultural centre of all of Naples, or all of Italy, excuse me, because it really was there was the Duchy of Napoli and then of Sicily. So it really was the capital of all of those before Rome obviously came in, and then it was invaded by Rome, and then Rome took over the country, and then of course Rome became the capital. But before that there was Naples. So it was a very important city, and when Italy became unified, Rome was the capital. But there's a fun story about Naples, I have to say, which comes from a long, long time ago, which is from Virgil. So that long ago, if you know Virgil. And basically it's set around there's 3 castles in Naples, and one of them is called the Castel dell'Ovo, which is Egg Castle. Have you ever heard of the legend of the egg?
No.
Okay, so I'm just going to try and remember. I have a couple of notes, but the legend of the egg is, it has said that tradition has it that the name came from a magic egg, which is believed to be hidden under this castle. So this entire castle was built on the foundation of an egg. And it is said that as long as the castle and the egg remain intact, so Naples will avoid catastrophe for as long as it stands. So this is one of the myths of Napoli, that underneath this massive castle there's a mythical egg that remains, that keeps the city thriving and going forward. It has a very strong historical background, and to this day you can really feel it in the city. You can see it, such an ancient city, obviously. And as I said, we live in the historical centre, so you walk along this, you see the original streets. They have the Royal Palace, which is part of the city centre. And one of the things I'll say about Napoli that is not also true of many other Italian cities is that the inhabitants, Neapolitans, live within the city. So oftentimes you'll go to major cities around Italy and they will be desolate at closing time because all of the inhabitants, all of the locals, shall we say, sort of move out. But Naples is, you are day and night surrounded by Neapolitans themselves, which gives you, I think, the soul of the city. It makes you feel it that much more because you know you're having this really original and traditional experience when you're here.
And Barbie, what are the people like? What are the Neapolitans like? Any stories of your encounters with them?
Sure, yeah, daily. How long do we have on this podcast? Because they are that kind of entertaining, dramatic, wonderful. In short, the Neapolitan people are, as I think I said earlier on, very warm, very giving, open-minded. And I'll preface this by saying I don't think you can generalize about any nation. I don't think you're going to have everybody in the same. But if I had to give an overall feeling about them, very embracing, very. I've used the word theatrical now 3 times, but that's how I feel. They are when they speak, they use their hands. I feel like maybe I'm doing that now a little bit. It's something like that. It just happens because it helps you to express yourself that little bit more. And they really of all the nations of Italy, all of the counties of Italy, they really would be the ones you see the most gesticulating because they can't control when they're speaking. They want to tell you if they love something or they hate something. You'll hear them speaking in the street very loudly, and oftentimes people will say, "Oh my God, are they fighting? Are they shouting?" I'm like, they're talking, they're just telling each other what happened last night, and they're like, "What?" They're like, no, it's just their way, and I really like that because it kind of, as I said, it's entertaining. They're also, I mentioned that they were kind. They're family centric, which I find very similar to Irish people. You know, I'm very close to my family. And, you know, I grew up in a large family. I'm very close to all of my siblings. My parents, unfortunately, have passed away, but you know, we still have this very important, I feel that's part of my upbringing of being an Irish person, that, you know, I no matter where I am, I'm always tethered to home and I feel incredibly Irish, even though I've been out of Ireland a very long time. And I'm very grateful for that. It's one of the things I love most. But I find the same thing here in Naples, that Neapolitans are very family-centric, which is of prime importance to me. They're industrious and they're very clever. And a lovely story that when I came here 17 years ago, I just moved here. I had been working and traveling, and I moved into the Centro Storico, into this apartment that was, you know, being renovated, and you know, we had no curtains on the window at the time, and I lived in a building in an old palazzo where you overlook a cortile, a courtyard, so people could kind of see in, and, you know, we have shutters, but when the shutters were open, people could see into your house. And maybe a week after being here, the doorbell rang late at night, and it was one of our neighbours from the palazzo, Carmine, and he was standing there, and he had said, "Look, I don't want to be nosy, I don't want to intrude. I know you've just moved in, but we've just noticed that in the last week you haven't turned on any televisions, and we have a feeling that you don't yet have a TV." And on his shoulder, he'd brought us a TV. And he said, "Here, this is for you." They brought us the TV so that we would have.
So lovely, yeah.
Yeah, so it was great.
And tell me, Barbie, for anybody who's listening and planning to visit, what do you think is the best time of year to visit?
I would say Naples is one of those cities that you can come all year round, because, and the only month I ever say to avoid is August. August is not a good month, only because many things are closed. The city really shuts down in August. It's incredibly hot. It's a city. Yes, it's on the beside the sea, but it's in the historical city, which is where most people want to come and stay and visit. You know, it's hot and very humid. But any month, spring is beautiful because it's not too hot and it's not wet and cold. But also November, December is a beautiful time because it's a very Christmassy city, like many other Italian cities. Christmas time is very big here. And here in Centro Storico, we have a street that's called San Gregorio Armeno, which is famous for making cribs and crib figurines. And it's very beautiful. It's full of lights and colours, and they make all the Christmas decorations, all handmade by artisans, local artisans, and streets of bars and cafe and lights. And it's never cold enough that you don't want to sit out in a piazza and have a coffee or an aperitivo. So it's charming, really charming all year round. And summer, of course, is lovely because people use, people use Naples for stopping off, as maybe do a weekend in Naples, and then they go off to the islands, or they go down to the Amalfi Coast. But now Naples is getting to the point where you can just come to your vacation or your holiday in Naples and stay for a week, because there's so much to do. There's so much to do here.
Yeah, and I suppose when we think of Italy, and perhaps particularly Naples, we do think of food, don't we? Or at least I know I do.
Yeah.
So what are the dishes that Naples is renowned for? Either if you want to cook yourself something simple at home, or if you were eating out, what would you eat?
Okay, so for me, what's typical food here is ragu. Ragu is a sort of like a tomato-based. It can either be, it's normally with meat. So it's normally with, it could be like a bolognese, or with meat that's been cooked overnight, long time, and it's incredibly delicious. The tomatoes here, they say because of the soil of Vesuvio, because we're at the base of the volcano, the tomatoes here have a particular flavour. They are the best in the world. So when you make this tomato-based ragu with a bolognese, or, as I said, the beef that's been cooking overnight, it's incredibly delicious. You can eat it on its own, but they obviously eat it with pasta. So ragu Napolitano would probably be a very traditional dish. There's a lot of fish in Naples, incredible fish. They eat it very simply. Here, when you order fish, it comes just the fish on the plate. It doesn't come with anything around it. It's just normally a grilled fish, which you generally have to clean yourself. And of course, you can ask for it to be cleaned, and they will, of course, do that. Contorni, which are side dishes. Very famous for Naples is frielli. It belongs to the family of broccoli, which is a sort of a bitter broccoli, but 10 times tastier. And I will say that when I moved to Napoli, I did not understand anybody who could eat it. And I was like, I don't care what you say, I'm never eating that, because it was so strange to me. And now my husband laughs, because now it is my favourite thing on the planet. I have obviously become slightly Neapolitan. I adore
You're a convert.
I am. And they eat it with sausages. I'm not a huge meat eater, but I do eat meat. So it's called salsiccia frielli. So sausage with frielli. It's very typical. It's delicious. Really amazing. And then that's the savoury food. Then there's the whole side of the sweet food.
Okay, give us a little taste.
Obviously, baba is a famous dessert here. It's like a light, spongy, strangely shaped, I will say, dessert, but it's covered in rum. And even though it looks like it would be heavy, it's super light and delicious. My dad always used to ask me to bring it back for him because he loved it so much. It was so delicious. And he never drank alcohol. But I said, Dad, you do know that there's rum on a baba? He goes, oh, it's delicious. I'm like, oh, really? Because he never did. He loved baba. It was so strange.
Well, there's a vote of confidence.
Really and truly. And then, of course, there's pasticcera, which is this dessert they eat at Easter time, which is a little heavier, but very delicious. And the last one is the most famous, sfogliatelle, which comes in either a riccia or a frolla, which means it's either crispy or like a cake-like substance, and inside is like a sweet ricotta cheese. And it is made with layers and layers of sort of phyllo pastry, super light and incredibly delicious.
Oh, it sounds it. It really does. Now, Barbie, if you had only one day in Naples, how would you spend it? What would you see and do?
Okay. I would wake up, I'd have an espresso or my cappuccino, I'd have a coffee in one of the piazzas in the Centro Storico, with either a sfogliatelle or ovviamente a cornetto or a croissant. And after that, I would take a little stroll around the historical centre. I would probably try and get tickets to San Severio to see the Veil of Christ, which has now become one of the most popular tour attractions here. It's a very beautiful statue where Christ is covered in a very thin veil of marble. It's very beautiful. Hard to get tickets now, but it's right in the historical centre. Take a wander around the churches. You can walk into all of them for free. They're always open. You walk in. Their opulence is incredible, very beautiful. And many of the churches in the historical centre have a long story behind them, whether they be a refuge for the bombings of World War II. So and then miraculously the church survived. Anyway, but there's stories and they're all written sort of outside the doors when you go into the churches. And then what I really would do, a great thing to do if I'd really one day and I wanted to understand Naples, I would jump on the red bus, which I tell many people to do, because it's great in Naples. It's 45 minutes all around the historical centre, and you get to see all of the main parts. And then it takes you down to the seaside called Lungomare. From there you swap onto a different line, same ticket, and you go all along the Bay of Naples out to the residential area of Posillipo. So that's about a 70-minute round trip tour. So all in all, you're not talking, you've got to see the historical old city centre, and you've also got to see the ocean, the different side of Naples, the non-chaotic green side that exists that nobody knows about and nobody goes to. So I don't ever recommend people to drive in the city. It's too complicated and it's quite dangerous to drive if you're not used to it. But the Red Bus Tour is a fantastic way to show you both sides. And that way you really get to see the greenery and the ocean, the view of the islands, and you get the understanding that Naples is not one-sided. I would return. I might have lunch on the ocean down in a lovely restaurant called Stella down there. And watch the people walking up and down. I would then come back up to the historical centre, have an aperitivo in the piazza, again, pick a different piazza and have an aperitivo, and have a delicious dinner in the many, many amazing trattorias that are here.
And tell me, if you had 3 days, what would you add?
I would add a day to Pompeii. Pompeii is fantastic, and it is kind of a day thing. It can be done in half a day, but it's a 45-minute train ride from the city centre. Very easy to get to. You arrive. I do recommend a guide at Pompeii. You can either sort of book a guide ahead of time, or even when you're there are guides there. Only because it's so vast. You could spend a week walking around Pompeii, and many people want to get to the highlights, go down to where the baths were, to the different sites. And the easiest way to do that, because it's enormous, is to just have somebody take you around it and say, okay, here's the highlights. And then you really kind of feel, and you hear the history of it from somebody who really knows it well. Another excellent day trip I would do is go to the island of Capri. There's 3 islands right beside Naples. There's Capri, Ischia and Procida. Capri is probably the most famous and where many people come to spend their holidays, bypassing Naples altogether, because it has it's a very high end. It is very expensive, incredibly beautiful, but easy to get around. And if you kind of know Capri, there are ways of getting around, the very, very expensive way of visiting it. I spent 4 months of the year on Capri because my husband is from there, and I know it very well. So I know that now, obviously, the ins and outs of how to maneuver around Capri, but it has everything. It has beautiful beaches. The water is unmatched. Incredible restaurants, incredible scenery, great for people who like to hike. And you really don't get to see Capri in a day trip. It's renowned. Hundreds, I don't know, thousands of people come daily to see it in the daytime. But you get stuck in a circuit of going to the piazza, having the coffee, going up here, thousands of tourists. But when the sun goes down and all the day trippers leave, that's when Capri becomes really magnificent. You feel it, you hear the sounds, you see the beauty, you see the sunset. It's very relaxed, and it's an incredible place to visit for sure. Ischia is also fantastic, but that little bit bigger and harder to get around if you don't have a car. And Procida is adorable and tiny and very easy to get around. It's just a different vibe, very, very low key and very cool. So I would do a 1 day trip to the island. And if I had 1 more day, of course, I'd go down the Amalfi Coast. On the Amalfi Coast, I would literally just have a coffee at Sorrento and then move on down to the tinier towns, which are Ravello. I think Ravello is the one that's high up on the hill. The only thing about the Amalfi Coast, I will say, is that it is hard to get around. It's people trying to plan a day trip to the Amalfi is tough. You can rent a car, or you can go down on the train, but driving is not that difficult on the Amalfi Coast, but you have to be careful. It's an incredibly windy road, so if anybody suffered from car sickness, I would never recommend that. But it is probably one of the most stunning drives, scenic-wise in the world. It's very beautiful. And all of the tiny towns, obviously Positano, Amalfi itself is full of history with an incredible Duomo. Ravello, obviously, is where the concerts, the musical concerts are held every year. Incredible to witness those. And all of the little towns have their own little tiny beauty to them. And it is a great thing to see if you have the time to do it.
Okay, so Barbie, tell me, what would your 3 top picks of things to do, see or do that you won't find in a guidebook?
This is a tough question because now, Ailish, everything is in a guidebook.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
It is. There's Piazza Falcone, which is a place that you can go up and visit, which is literally supposed to be one of the places that the Greeks first came to. That's a location where you can go to and sort of see the heart of Naples, where it was first founded. Then another thing to do is obviously there's 3 Caravaggios in Naples, and I know that they are obviously going to be listed places, but there's one that you can actually just walk into in Centro Storico in Forcello, which is it's in a church and it's in behind, where you could just walk into the church and the Caravaggio is right there. That's Pio Misericordio is the name of the church. And another thing that I think is a great thing to do is to go up to Capodimonte, which many people do not do, and that is the old summer palace of the royals, but it's a park, and not many people think of Naples as having this glorious, huge green park full of mature trees and walking paths. And inside that park is the summer palace, the Capodimonte Palace, and inside there is another Caravaggio, and there's also a beautiful museum full of the historic paintings of Naples. And very few people go up there to do that, so that's a great thing to do.
Okay, they sound like great tips to me.
Yeah.
So Barbie, we're coming out to our quick fire round.
Okay.
So best way to get around the city?
Walking. There are 2 ways around it.
Okay. Best place to stay?
I might have to do a little self-promotion on best place to stay, which I never do. There's a beautiful boutique, a little B&B called Arcadia, Napoli Luxury Rooms, based in the historical centre. We are basically just a 3-bedroomed boutique B&B, but done in a very sort of luxurious style. My husband's an architect, interior designer, and he did all of the interiors, including all the handmade furnitures and beds, etc. Very comfortable, very reasonable, and it's right in this historical centre, 2 steps from the main road, off the beaten track, so it's quiet, but yet it's right in the centre. So very,
fantastic.
Yeah.
Best photo opportunity?
Either up on Via Orazio, which is high up on the hills. People go up there and they take photographs because it overlooks all of Napoli, and you can sort of see Naples in the Bay of Naples and Vesuvio in the background, but also Lungomare, which is the seafront, the Bay of Naples itself. It's beautiful to take a photo there with the islands in the background, either in the morning or the evening.
Okay. Best place for a coffee?
Best place for coffee, I'm going to say Bar Nilo, which is a historical bar in the Centro Storico. Maradona is the patron sort of hero of Napoli, being the footballer that he was. He brought them to glory. And there's a bar right in the historical centre where the owner met Maradona, and the story is they plucked the hair from his head and they have it in a rotating glass tube inside the bar. So it's funny. People want to come and see it. It's known as the Maradona bar. But it looks like a little sort of hole in the wall, as we say in English, bar, but coffee is fantastic.
Okay. And best place for a drink?
I am partial. I'm going to give you 2 places to champagne. And not many people think that Napoli is a place you would come to and have a champagne. But there's a bar on Via Salvador Rosa by Salvatore Cautoro. It's called the Champagne Bar. And he does the most incredible aperitivos. You go in, champagne, it's elegant, it's beautiful, it's fun, tiny little place to go. Would never find it unless you knew about it because he only has 12 places. But you're surrounded by this beautiful wall of champagne, beautiful. And he does incredible sort of handmade, delicious foods to go with the champagne. That's if you love champagne, and not everybody does, but it's a fantastic experience. Another place to go is Babar, which is a bar that's right in the centre again. And that is a great place to go either summer or winter because they have a fireplace in the winter and they have a rooftop garden in all year round as well. So if you want to be on the garden, inside the walls of the historical centre or down by the fireplace, great place to go.
Okay. And your favourite restaurant?
Has to be Taverna dell'Arte. It's been there for a long time. I think I mentioned it that it was in that movie Passione. We've been going there for a number of times, and it has now been taken over by this incredible artisan or Marcellino who curates everything in that restaurant. In that it's not a large restaurant. I mean, it maybe seats at maybe about 50 people, but it's this incredibly cozy environment, and it's reservations only because it's become very, very popular, because I think it was mentioned in some magazine in New York. But it's one of those things that I call like a hidden door restaurant. Like, unless you knew about it, you wouldn't see it. There's like a little lamp outside, but when you go in, it's sort of maintained its traditional Neapolitan roots. The menu is very small but fantastic. You know what you're going to get is handmade, delicious, very reasonably priced, incredible wine list, and an absolute go-to. Taverna dell'Arte.
That's going on my list, definitely. Your best art or architecture experience?
Here, I mean, you're surrounded by architecture. Everywhere you walk down the streets, there's churches, there's museums. But if you sort of want to see art and architecture together, also from the past, you need to go to the Museo Archeologico, otherwise known as Man Museum. It's the large museum in Napoli, which is an incredible experience. You could go there for 7 days and not see everything. It has ruins, Roman ruins, obviously lots from Pompeii. And it sort of has, it's a one-stop shop where you can see lots of things.
Okay, so your best outdoor experience, Barbie?
My best outdoor is, I'm always going to refer back to Lungomare. When you're walking around Naples, you know, it's quite busy. You go in and out of museums and churches, etc. But outdoors, obviously taking an aperitivo in the piazza, if you want to say that, it's it's a lovely experience just sitting there watching the people go by. But to do a sort of feel that you're on the outdoors, you need to sort of walk down to the Bay of Naples, which is about a 15-minute walk from the city centre, and very easy to get to. And then once you're down by the ocean, you walk along the ocean and you're looking at the islands, and you're looking at Vesuvio, and you hear the ocean. It's beautiful, it's clean, it's pedestrian only, so it's an incredible experience.
I'm sold. Best nighttime entertainment?
Now, Naples is all about bars and restaurants. So it has to be just sort of, I don't want to say bar hopping because, you know, it's not really a thing here, but people are out on the streets at nighttime all the time. Weekends are very busy, but also during the week. They sit down in bars because the weather's normally quite temperate. It's normally possible all year round. So really going to the different piazzas, sitting and having an aperitivo, going for dinner, and then back after to have a digestivo after dinner.
The best local sports experience?
The arena, because, you know, in the city centre there's no sort of sports camp, but here we have the beautiful Stadio Diego Armando Maradona, which is named after him, which is the huge arena where the football team play. And of course, Naples are now becoming incredible. They won the Scudetto last year, so, you know, all of the city is, you know, behind the football team. It's a very strong presence in the city. People are very proud of it, and so the stadium has now become, you know, very popular, obviously. So when they play, it's always sold out. But it's a great time it's a great place to go to witness some incredible sport.
Great atmosphere, I'd say.
Yes, incredible.
So, Barbie, we've talked a lot about the good things. What would you say has been your worst experience in Naples?
The worst experience is probably, I mean, ridiculous. It's traffic, because traffic is terrible in Naples. It's very difficult to get around. And it is something to get used to when you come here. The bikes flying around the place. It's not the craziness of how they drive. It's an incredible system. You have to be a race car driver, though, and feel comfortable behind the wheel to race car drive, or you can't do it. So traffic is one. And the other thing I really don't like here, I can't get used to, is the siesta. Everything closes between 1:30 and 4:30. So unless you get everything done early morning, and then also things sometimes don't open until 10. So opening hours of things are difficult. So for me, the shutting down of everything between 1:30 and 4:30, which doesn't happen all the time now. It's loosened up a tiny bit, but it still happens, and I find that very difficult.
And important for people visiting to realise that as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, Barbie, if you had room in your suitcase, if you were visiting Naples, what should you buy to bring home?
I would buy to bring home from here. Hard to bring home, but the mozzarella is unmatched. If you wanted to have a decent mozzarella at home for dinner one night, it's incredible. They do pack it up here very well. I don't think I'd put it in my suitcase, but I would definitely bring back mozzarella. There's a thing here called confetti, which is a type of sweet. I don't know if you've heard of it. They are almonds and they're covered in chocolate and then coating, and they use them here for celebrations. So for baptisms and communions and weddings, and they come in all different flavours, and my family always asked me to bring them back because, you know, they're delicious. But it's a nice gift to bring back, and it's also a nice reminder of Napoli. Kimbo coffee is fantastic here. Coffee in Naples is one of the best, and Kimbo's from here. There's another thing called taralli, which is a sort of savoury biscuit or crunchy biscuit that is famous to Napoli. And they sort of have shops now that just sell them. They also vacuum pack them so you can bring them home. And they're great with an aperitivo, or they're a savoury thing. They actually now make them sweet too, but they're quite famous here. And they're light and easy to bring home.
Which is so important.
Yeah.
If you had to pick one thing that you would miss about Naples, what would it be?
The weather.
Why am I not surprised?
I love the rain on a beautiful rainy day when I'm inside. I love that. I love the greenery. I love all of those things. But I love the weather here. You know, it rains here too, but in generally speaking, I know once May comes around until September, it's going to be hot and sunny.
And final question, Barbie, where would the next best place to Naples be?
From a travel perspective, I love Thailand. I love the culture of the Thais. I find them very peaceful and graceful, and I love their food. I love Asian food. I've travelled quite a bit through Asia, and I always loved my experiences doing that.
Barbie, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed our chat. Thank you so much for being my guest.
No, thank you, Eilish. It was such a pleasure. I'm so delighted to have had the opportunity to talk about it. Thank you for asking me.
I hope you enjoyed my chat with Barbie. She just makes you want to hop on a plane to Naples, doesn't she? Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love if you'd recommend it to a friend. And remember, to be the first to know when a new episode becomes available, don't forget to hit follow or subscribe. I hope you'll join me next time.